This is the cheapest trolling motor you can get. This is the Minn Kota Endura 30 pounds of thrust 12-volt trolling motor. So if you're thinking about getting yourself a trolling motor and you're wondering, is the cheapest trolling motor worth it? And what is the cheapest trolling motor? Well, there we go. We just covered one of them. This right now is the cheapest trolling motor you can buy. Some of you don't like to shop on Amazon. This can be found at Walmart, Cabela's, Bass Pro Shop, Dick's Sporting Goods, I think. You can buy it online and on the shelf at a variety of places. I went to my nearest Walmart, and this was on the shelf, sitting right there in stock. And later on in this video, we're gonna take this trolling motor out on this 14-foot aluminum boat right here and just see how it does. So, let's talk a little bit about this. Gasoline outboards are rated in horsepower. Our electric outboards, like the e-Propulsion Spirit, the Torqeedo, and the Newport, they're rated in watts. But for some reason, trolling motors are measured in pounds of thrust. And there are charts, like on the Minn Kota site and other places, that will tell you the pounds of thrust calculations for what size boat you have and what's right for you. But sometimes it would be neat to see a comparison. I have a video that I'll link up here where I compare this one to a 55 pound of thrust Minn Kota trolling motor and a really, really old Shakespeare trolling motor that's much less thrust. And I show how each of these perform on my 14-foot boat. This is a transom mount basic trolling motor, and it runs off of a 12-volt battery. You can pick a variety of different 12-volt batteries, but your 12-volt battery is your standard, regular type of car battery, if you will. Although you don't really want to use a car battery, you want one that's a deep cycle, because that's what works best with one of these. Let's open this thing up, shall we? Take a look. Electric outboards, like the Propulsion, Torqeedo, and Newport, are usually a brushless design, and this is a brushed motor design. I think the idea is that the brushless motors are maybe more efficient. They have less moving parts, there's less friction. The brushes on this actually create some friction, but brushed electric motors have been used for probably 100 years or more, so they work. And I don't believe that these are intended to be run for hours at a time at top speed, which is one of the differences between these and something like an e-Propulsion. Those are designed to be run at a high speed for a long period of time. Matter of fact, I have a video where I ran an e-Propulsion at top speed for a few hours on a trip with a great big battery, and everything went fine. These are not designed for that. So let's see, first of all, we have a tag here that says warning. When tilting motor, keep fingers clear of all hinges and pivot points and all moving parts. Basically, you're guaranteed to pinch your fingers once or twice and cuss. That's what this means. So keep that in mind. They warned you. And it looks like all of the assembly we have to do is we just have to pop this handle on. And there's an instruction book. Ooh, and accessories. Schematics. This is actually quite a comprehensive book, written in English and in French. I don't think I need to read the manual to figure out how to put the handle on. This video is not sponsored by Minn Kota or anything, so please read the owner's manual if you go to get one of these and follow the instructions, not just what I'm saying in this video. Safety considerations, bunch of warnings. Knowing my boat. Tells us the parts of the boat right here. This has a battery meter in it. My other Minn Kota has a battery meter and it doesn't work, so hopefully this one works. Remove the wire clip from the ball detent located on the inner handle. Oh, it's this. So we're supposed to remove this wire clip. That's this little wire clip right here. Install the outer handle over the inner handle. Position the handles so the ball detent and off are aligned. There we go. Push the outer handle into the control box until handle clicks into place. Some force may be required to lock the handles together. Whoop, there we go. Once the handle is locked into the control box, it can be rotated and extended for normal use. Once the handle is installed, the assembly is permanent. Do not attempt to remove the handle. This is the extension part. There's the different settings. And there it is, put back away. These things couldn't be simpler, just so you know. They're very, very simple. First time out, the clamp actually is sitting this angle here, which has it sideways, so release the lever. Just plop it on the boat. This should be sitting on the back edge, and then you tighten these clamps down. You don't need to be ridiculous with how you tighten them down. They just get snugged up so that it's snug. Remember, this is just a trolling motor. It's not going to have so much torque that it's going to fly off the back of your boat. But you can lose it if you don't tighten the clamps down. Couple things to note. A trolling motor, just like any other motor or engine for a boat, should not be run dry. The cooling for this motor is based on the motor part, which is in the bottom, being in the water. And the water is what cools it. So when it's sitting in the water, in the river, that's what's cooling it. Let me do the pinch my finger thing that I'm supposed to do here. Didn't it say something about being careful not to pinch my fingers? There we go. They tell you that in the instructions. Don't run it when it's dry. But I can tell you, I have connected the battery, clicked one of these things on to watch the propeller spin for a second just to make sure it's working, and then I turn it right off again. But they tell you not to do that. The other thing is, they give you these wires, and it's about 6 foot in length for you to connect to your battery. Ideally, a lot of people like to put their battery or batteries farther forward in the boat and have them sitting up front. That way you get better weight distribution. That's not necessarily important with a trolling motor, but if you've got another engine on the boat and some other gear and everything's at the back, that's a lot of weight in the back of the boat. So that's another reason why people like to put their batteries at the front. Also, they recommend that you use a circuit breaker with this. Now, you can wire this straight to the battery, and I personally have done that 1,000 times, and I'm not telling you you should do it. I'm just letting you know that I have. I've never had a problem. However, I've also never run my prop into weeds or got it tangled in fishing line. And that's why they want you to run a circuit breaker. Because if you're running this and something tangles up your prop, when there's something giving resistance like that, that will pop the circuit and save your motor. And I believe the Coast Guard also requires us to have a circuit breaker in here, just so you know. Theoretically, you can just wire this straight to the battery. Put your red on your positive, your black on your negative. Make sure this is set to off. And Bob's your uncle. There is a height adjustment. If I've got a very deep transom or I want to be sitting low in my boat, I can slide this all the way up, and then the motor can sit deeper in the water, farther down. Conversely, I can also have it set very shallow if I'm in a very shallow boat. So if I've got a really shallow skiff where I want it to be right here, I just slide this collar down to that level. You can lubricate this shaft, by the way, you can lubricate the shaft to be able to have this move more freely. Once you get it to the height that you want, then you just tighten this nut up, and that just keeps this from going farther down, but it can still come up from there, but it won't go any deeper into the water. This other one here, this is your tension for rotating. What's cool about that is that you can apply a certain amount of tension for as you're using the motor, so that way it, gives you a bit of resistance, stays where you put it. But you can also, in certain situations, like if you're fishing, you can lock it down. So if you want it to be dead straight, locked down, you can tighten that up a little bit more, and it's locked down dead straight right now. This lever is for tipping it up out of the water. So as you're coming up out of the boat ramp, as you're getting ready to come home, you can click it all the way up like that. They also recommend that you slide it all the way up like this, because this is the heaviest part, so you have it next to the clamp here. So that way, it's being stored just like that. That's how they want you to transport it if you're leaving it on the boat. I, a lot of times, just remove it from my boat because I'm not going far and I don't like a bunch of things bouncing around and hanging on my transom. So this clicker right here, you can pick your angle. And the idea is that you want this to be at a straight angle with the water. So if your boat sits like this, because it's empty, and you're in the back and your battery's in the back, so the boat sits a little bow high, you may end up having this angle right here be straight down in the water for you. If you're getting a lot of bubbling and cavitation around the prop, you just drop it down a little lower in the water by loosening this up and dropping it a little farther down into the water. And that way your motor sits just a little bit deeper in the water. Might cavitate a little bit less. I'm going to set mine to be a little bit deeper than that, I think, right about here. So right now I've got this positioned just below the transom of the boat. So this is where the motor sits, and as you can see, it spins freely. If I were to have the motor up higher at this angle, it still works, barely clears it, but if I were to have the motor tilted in a little bit further, this does hit, and that does hit. This does not have to be mounted in the center either. It could be mounted off center. This particular boat right here doesn't have a lot of motor space, so I'm going to mount it right there in the center. Also, this has a telescoping handle, so if my seating was farther forward, I can pull this handle out, and it makes it easier for me to operate this. They also sell extension handles if you want to sit way farther forward in your boat to operate it. And that's all there is to it. It has 5 forward speeds and 3 reverse speeds. And they're clearly labeled on the handle right now until they fade and wear out. You don't even have to switch this thing on. You just connect it to your battery, click, away you go. Once again, trolling motors couldn't be simpler. I would also like to note that this motor is a freshwater only motor. It's not to be used in brackish water or salt water. Minn Kota makes a series that is saltwater compatible, and supposedly the similar priced Newport trolling motor is safe for salt water. So that might be a consideration for you if you're going to be boating in saltwater. I am going to be boating in brackish water, so I'm going to spray this down real quick before I use it. And if it fails prematurely, it's because I'm using it in brackish water. All right, that's enough yakking about things. My battery's fully charged. Let's take this out on the water and see how it does. Let's let her rip here. Let's turn ourselves around. Can you hear that? I don't know why it's sounding like that. This one had a problem right out of the box, and I didn't know it. And the problem was that the way the prop is made, it's molded in a machine or whatever, and when it was put together at the factory, they probably just do a quick spin test of it dry. It wasn't rubbing, because I didn't get it to rub. But when I put it in water, it did rub. And it rubbed so hard that it made this thunking noise. It's sad that this happens, but you know, asking Minn Kota to water test every single one of these, I think, is a little unrealistic. So instead of returning it, I thought, let me just see if I can take some sandpaper and sand down the inner edge of this prop and smooth it out and see if that fixes the problem. So I pulled the prop off. It's just a 1/2-inch nut. It's a nylon locking nut. And sure enough, I saw these 2 silver spots on the motor housing where the prop is rubbing. I could see where it was uneven on the inside edge of it. And then I took the prop and I just set it down on some sandpaper on a board and sanded the inside of that until the burr was off of that lip. And then I felt around the lip and there was a little bump on the outside of that lip, so I sanded that smooth as well. So with all of that sanded now, that seems to have fixed the problem. So, am I disappointed that my brand new out-of-the-box Minn Kota trolling motor wasn't perfect? Absolutely, I'm disappointed. However, it was a simple fix, and as you know, a lot of times with manufactured items these days, if I was to have returned that, they probably would have just thrown it away, because it's not economically feasible for these companies to go through these things and find out what's wrong with them and troubleshoot it. It's much more economically feasible to just throw these things away whenever there's a problem. It's a $140 motor. Now, this is not as smooth running as my Minn Kota 55 pound of thrust saltwater trolling motor that I have. That one is silent at top speed. And this one, when I go to top speed, here, has a little bit of noise. Most of that clang, clang, clanging sound is the water against the hull of this aluminum boat. The motor makes kind of a sound. Let me turn and see if you can hear it better. Get a little bit of vibration right there. Everything's tight. There's nothing physically rattling with this. Bring it back to speed 4 and it's fine. Thank you so much for watching. You should watch this video right here next. It's where I compare this exact motor to 2 other 12-volt trolling motors